Welcome to this Fisheries seminar. I am hosting it. I'm Izzy. I'm a PhD student in Williams Lab, so that's the Changing Oceans Research Unit. So to our speaker, I'm very proud to be introducing our presenter today, Professor Pierre. So Professor Ferrier is a professor of economics in the Faculty of Business and Law at the University of Portsmouth in the UK. And more relevantly for us, he's also the director for the Centre of Blue Governance and holds the UNESCO chair in ocean governance. For more than 25 years, Dr. Ferrier has coordinated complex research projects with multidisciplinary teams across Europe, North America, Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and Pacific coastal countries, and that's more than 40 countries to date. Also in collaboration with national research institutions and university, and also closely linking with policy bodies. He recently coordinated the Blue Economy Strategy for the African Union, the Regional Action Plan for the Blue Economy of the Indian Ocean Commission, the Blue Economy Strategy of the Intergovernmental Authority for the Development, as well as the Blue Economy Strategy for Bangladesh, Seychelles, Guinea, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Madagascar, and Tanzania. Quite the list. He's also authored and co-authored about 160 journal articles and 350 book chapters, research reports, consultancy reports, and I'm sure many more. He's also a scientific evaluator for several research councils in the UK, Europe, North America, Africa, and Asia. So this should be an amazing talk. Welcome, Professor. And I'll pass over to you.
Okay, so we start. Okay, so the idea of the presentation is quite simple, is to give you an overview of what is the blue economy at the moment and the way we are conceiving it and the way it has been implemented in many places. And at the end, looking for something a bit more tangible in the way that the blue economy itself is not something that presents, we can say, something interesting for the country, except if we have like a blue, what I mentioned here, a blue governance scheme in place. So just for the that's mainly for the student. This is not for Rashid and the other people. Is about the blue economy, the concept. You need to have in mind that the concept has been set up mainly by the small islands and developing states. So we have been working already in 2012, 2013 for the preparation of the Samora conference. So we made this small book, for the African Union, for the UNECA, which is the UN Economic Commission for Africa, about the unlocking the full potential of the blue economy. So I did that with Iris Monroe. The idea already was to really to promote the ocean economy and really to do something, especially for the Pacific countries, the Caribbean countries, and some of the African countries that were facing some issues regarding the fact that they were a bit remote and they didn't really know what to do with their oceans. So that was the main things, and I think on the left I put also some timeline from the Hull Summit, the Rio Summit in 1992, when we developed the sustainability concept based on the Brundtland report from 1987. The Rio +20, where the green economy emerged. I think we did something with UNEP, with Rashid, about something on fisheries, and the blue economy concept started to emerge at that time. Okay, but it was more about greening, the things that doing something really green, we can say so. But more recently, I think it really set up when we had this New York conference on the oceans in 2017. And from then, there's been a big acceleration in the blue economy implementation, the blue economy development all over the place. I put here the African Union report. It is in Arabic for our Arabic friends. that has been done, and I think is the first continental strategy for the blue economy. And the good point is that, and this is quite uncommon or unusual, is that they listen to us. You know, usually the politicians don't listen to the expert or to the consultant, but this time they did. And based on this, we developed another interesting piece of work, that is the Blue Governance Scheme for Africa. So that's quite interesting. So it's really about how to implement the blue economy policy for Africa. So that was interesting. So now, and you can see, I think I put a small box here where you can see that all the associated or derived products. So we have the blue growth made by the European Union. So that started quite a long time ago. Blue growth in the mind of the EU people is really about the new blue activities like the biotechnology, the blue energy, things like this. And compared to the blue economy that refers for them to the traditional activities like the fisheries, the aquaculture, the coastal tourisms, and things like this. We have the ocean economy, that's the UNEP. We have the ocean governance, this is me. With the blue governance as well, the blue carbon, that's more and more upfront, especially with the development of the blue carbon market. The blue guardians, the blue finance, the blue bond, the blue belt, the blue belt and the blue guardians is from the Commonwealth. So there's a lot of things that are emerging, we can say, thanks to the blue economy development. This is something that is interesting. We did that with UNICA a few years ago. That was in 2015, if I remember. It's about trying to develop a concept of the blue economy that is not only the development of some economic activities, but is more something that is integrated and interlinked. So, and I think on the left you can see, you know, that the three usual pillars of the sustainability are there, but also, you know, they link from the blue economy to we can say to the national, the regional, and the international level. And on the right, it's a bit more complicated because you can see that the blue economy is associated with many other concepts like the circular economy. I think we have here the green port, the debt swap, the ecotourism, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that interfere with the blue economy. So the blue economy is not something that's standalone, it's something that is very highly connected with the other concept and the other pillars of the sustainability. So that's something that we need to have in mind when we develop the blue economy strategies for a country or for regions or even for Africa. The other point that is interesting is that the blue economy is really linked to each SDG. Okay, so it's not only the 14 that is obvious on the ocean, or the life below water, and the 13 regarding the climate change, but is also closely linked to the one, you know, the food is the second for the food, etc., etc. Okay, so that's something interesting to look at. Because most of the time is just about the SDG 14. And you can see here clearly that it covers the 17 SDG. But despite the UNICA work and all the other work, when we mention the blue economy, it's more or less restricted and is more or less, how can I say that? We adopt more or less a very old approach, which is a sectorial approach. So, and you can see this in this World Bank reports, is that they look at the blue economy from a very sectorial approach. Okay, so it's about the fisheries, what's happened in the fishery, what's happened in the aquaculture, what's happened in the oil and gas, what's happened, etc., etc. So it's not approached from a very integrated or from a multi-sectorial way. So it's a very standard approach. The difficulty when we look at this is that it is not blue economy as such. It is more maritime or traditional maritime economy. Okay, and it's very difficult to move we can say, the way the people are thinking about the blue economy. For, I think, one particular reason is that all of these people have a background, for most of them, in fisheries, okay? And they don't have too much or a very expanded knowledge in the other area of the blue economy. So they are thinking blue economy from their own perspective. And it's very difficult for them to move a bit forward or to go a bit outside and to include the other component of the blue economy, and to also think about the blue economy from a very disciplinary or trans-sectorial approach. And I think you can see here, I think we have some images of pollutions, and pollution is one of the key things that you need to be addressed from a very trans-sectorial approach. You cannot address the plastic pollution just looking at the loss of gears from the fisheries or the plastic bottles from tourism. You need to address it really from a very multi-sectorial perspective. Same for the carbon, the carbon neutrality, and same for many other things. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that the social, it's a bit missing in the, I think few people, I think like Rashid did some papers on this recently about the missing elements of the blue economy, and the social dimension is quite missed at the moment. Okay, so at the end we have a lot of work to do in order to move or to switch the mind of the people and in the way that they adopt a more transformative approach towards the blue economy implementation. So thanks to we can say, to the work we are doing, and us and others, things are changing a bit, and we are more and more working. And here I'm in Madagascar at the moment, so I was attending a blue economy workshop because we are designing the blue economy for Madagascar. Things are changing in the way that even the policy makers and the people in the administration start to think the blue economy in terms of connection, in terms of bridges between 2 or 3 or different activities. So that's quite interesting. Just a word, about the basic. So we saw, previously on the UNICA slides that the blue economy refers to many different things. So, but you have to start from somewhere. And I think that one of the starting point is the circular economy. This is something very, very important. And at the moment we are developing with the World Bank in the Indian Ocean, and for the, I think 7 island countries in Africa, plus Maldives, some circular economy framework and incentive for the entrepreneurs, frame for the incentive for the entrepreneurs in the framework of the blue economy development for all of these islands. And that's really the pillar of the development of the blue economy. So the good governance is another one. I think this is quite obvious. I think we mentioned the environmental and the social sustainability. And the other one, and this is very important, for instance, in Madagascar, is the empowerment and inclusive decision makers. Okay, so we are referring, for instance, we are mentioning, for instance, the development of the aquaculture here in Madagascar, especially not the shrimp aquaculture that you know, but the algae aquaculture, which is quite developed, but not so much, like in Tanzania, in Zanzibar. And this has been one of the key ways for the women to get some power, okay, to get some money and to get some power here in Madagascar, same in Zanzibar, and of course, in Indonesia and in Malaysia and in the other Asian countries. But that's something very, very important to have in mind when you design blue economy interventions. The other thing that is more or less missing and the people don't think too much about that, is that when they are developing, when the country wants to develop their blue economy strategy, they are more or less dreaming because they want to have big boats, fishing big fish, everything should be big. But they are most of the time missing, the key point, which is first to fix, what needs where we have some issues. And this is, for instance, I think the picture on the top is from Bangladesh. Trash fish has been a key issue for many, many years. Okay, and the interesting thing is that it was a big issue for the scientists, but not for the Ministry of Fisheries in Bangladesh. Okay, and so we have been working there for 4 years, pushing quite a lot, for adopting, for the ministry to adopt some measures for the trash fish. And so we have been able to convince them at the end that it was a big issue, because you have shrimps, that are and many small fish that are not valued at all. And so after 3-4 years, of work, they have been able to take some measures and to put a ban on the trash fish. Okay, so it's a big issue, a big social issue, yes, but at the end, the people now start thinking about better manage, the resources that they have. Okay, so the first point is really about fixing the existing problem by enforcing the existing measures, or by implementing new measures, like for the trash fish. I put the other example in West Africa. We are working on this at the moment. We are designing, for instance, the new European program for supporting West African countries. It's about 60 million euros, so it's not nothing. And it will target, of course, climate change, stuff like this, but also the problem of the migratory fisheries that is more or less in certain locations 25% of the catches of the West African in the West African seas, and it doesn't appear anywhere. Okay, so it's a huge issues. Like almost all the exports from Senegal are coming from Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, even Cabo Verde, for some of them, but they are not recorded anywhere. So this is a big issue that needs to be fixed. Of course, the environmental protection, sorry. So that's an everywhere issue. So that's the key point, is about the blue economy. People want to do big things, but the first things to do is really to tackle the current issue and to fix them before thinking about going offshore or doing other things. The other thing that we are seeing I think that's almost everywhere, is the lack of planning. Okay, and this is what the MSP, the Marine Special Planning, it's quite important. It's important for two things, because it provides a good special, we can say a special dimension, and this is very good for policymakers to discuss about, what to do here, and to avoid the externalities. I think this is a picture that we have from, don't remember if it's Chittagong in Bangladesh or Dhaka, but anyway, you can see in the bottom, this is what's happened where you don't have any planning. Okay, so it's a big traffic jam, and it's a big loss for everybody, big loss of money, big loss of time, etc. And on the top, you have the EU image of the blue growth, okay, where everything is in harmony, everything works fine, and there is no negative externalities between the different activities of the blue economy. So this is what we want to achieve, rather than a traffic jam because of the lack of planning. Okay. The other point with the marine special planning is that it's very important for the investor, because the land or the piece of water or the area of water, is secure for 30, 60 years. So this is important for especially for the foreign investor in the developing countries, is that they know that if they want to build a Hilton on the beach, next year they will not have people drilling oil in front of the Hilton, okay, or having a fish farm in front of the Hilton. So, and same for the fish farm. So that's very, very important for that, to secure the environment, the investment, and to reduce the negative externalities. The coordination, this is the most challenging one, because when you work with at the country level or at the regional level, the people don't see the issue of coordination. For them, there's not such a big need for coordination. Okay, while it is the most important one. Not only between the administration itself, but also between the administration and the research institutions, the private sectors, in order to develop, for instance, some private public partnerships. But the key thing is really about having the interministerial coordination, and that's really a big challenge in Bangladesh, for instance. It took us about 3 years to have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is driven the blue economy, to accept that there is a need for coordination. Okay, so you can imagine after 3 years of work. Okay, so that's very challenging. It's changing everywhere. Like in Mauritius, at the moment they are revamping, the new or setting a new national ocean coordination unit, because the previous one was not working well. And it was not working well because the connection with the other ministries were not very efficient. And the other key point is that they didn't have any power or any leverage to have the other ministers on board. So you see that this is something very, very important. So so there's different ways, to develop this. That's another issue, and I think that's everywhere, is the ecosystem services, or the lack of consideration of what the nature can bring to the people, and what the nature can do also for the climate change. This is always disregarded or considered as a second option, or something that we will do later. Okay, while more and more, and I think we see that later, but more and more we try to bring the attention of the decision of the policymakers to this, to put the environmental first and to put the economic second, environmental and social first and the economic seconds. Okay, that we'll not discuss for the Blue Economy Development Bank, but that's important. That's something interesting to look at, because when you look at the two figures here, you will see that in the coming years, the coastal tourism will be the biggest value addition provider for Africa. Okay, and also in terms of jobs. But what is maybe a bit more interesting is that when you look at the fisheries here, so on the top and in the bottom, you will see that more or less for 1 million of value addition generated, if I remember, you have about 2,300 jobs linked to that. Okay, if you do the same for the coastal tourisms, you will end up with, I think, more or less about 700 jobs for 1 million of value addition. Okay, it means that for something that you want to invest, of course, you will go for the coastal tourism. Okay, and this is where also the value added generated goes, a big part of it, goes offshore. Okay, because it's foreign investment, while in the fishery sector, it's mainly driven by the communities. Okay, so the money stay in. So more or less, in a nutshell, when you invest in the fishery sector, you will create much more, about 3 times more jobs than if you invest in the coastal tourism. So this is something important to have in mind. Okay, even if the value addition is quite weak compared to the tourism, compared to the oil and gas, etc., it's still very, very important for the coastal fisheries communities. I think we put as well the blue carbon and the ecosystem services. They will become quite big, and in fact their value, will get up, and it will get up especially because they will have more and more money channeled to the restoration of the ecosystem and the protection of the ecosystem, especially in the coming years. And for instance, the EU planned with the Overseas Development Scheme to put 50% of the money spent on the climate change adaptation and mitigation. So it's about 50% of the 98 billion of euros that will be spent over the next 4 years. Okay, so that's quite significant. Okay, so don't want to spend too much time. So there's other things that I'm missing at the moment, and this is this is important, is about the accounting. So the people more or less, they don't know, what is the blue economy in terms of value addition, jobs. So we did that for Africa, but it was quite challenging to get the figures. At the country level, it's also very challenging. We have done that for Seychelles. Even Seychelles, is quite the champion, the blue economy champion for Africa. Very challenging to get the data. We did that for Djibouti, Rwanda, for the inland waters. Very, very challenging to have the data. So that's something that we need to have in mind. Okay. And the other thing is that so we have developed a blue accounting toolkit with Unica, and next week, for instance, I am in Tanzania next week, and we have a training session on this. There's also a training session for those who are interested. They will have a new one, I think next, if I remember, next March with Unica and EDEP in Senegal. That's online, so you can take it. It's free, and you get a certificate at the end, which is good. So that's some tools that are interesting because it gives you a very good a baseline, and you know what you have in terms of data from the economics, the environmental, and also the social point of view. And also it allows you to register the progress. Okay. And the important things for the countries also is that this provides some we can say some background for the development of any blue financial scheme. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but maybe you saw that Barbados is on the way to do that. Belize has done a debt swap for 110 million recently. So you need to have evidence, to develop this type of blue financing scheme. The other things, and this is back to the ecosystems. So we did a review of the African ecosystem, and we found out that more or less all of them were not in a very good shape. And I think you can see here for the mangrove, they are more or less 44% of what they should be in terms of ecological condition or health status. Okay, for the coral reef is a bit better. For seagrasses, is more or less the same as mangrove. For the kelp, but you find that only in southern part of Africa, it's quite okay, but it's still 75%. And more or less, if we do all the surface, we are less than 60%. Okay, and if we translate that into fisheries, for instance, so we did this, and I think Rashid was reviewing this document for us. If we translate that into fish, it means that if we restore the ecosystems by to increase their capacity by 50–60%, okay, we will increase the fish production almost by 10 million tons. Okay, so you see the direct link between the health of the coastal and marine ecosystem and the fish production. And this is something very important because up to now, there was these two, we can say, components were completely disconnected. Okay, so the fishery people never thought about the health of the ecosystems, coastal ecosystem, and same the environmental people never thought really about the service they were supplying, they were giving to the fisheries. Okay, so for this, for instance, we are currently developing a JEF project in the Gulf of Guinea, where we are establishing the link and putting these two components, of the blue economy together, in order that the fishery, okay, will support the rehabilitation of the coastal and the protection of the coastal ecosystems. So that's something that we need to have in mind, and this is something that is quite challenging but quite interesting to develop. The other thing that is interesting at the moment is that the attention is less and less on the biodiversity and even the ecosystem services like fisheries and stuff like this. but more and more on the climate change. Okay, and you can see that, I mean, all the attention that the COP26 got, you know, and the COP27 that will be next month in Egypt. All the attraction is on this, and while the COP15 for the biodiversity, you know, didn't attract any attention, or very weak attention. Okay, but there's a reason, is that all of these coastal ecosystem can contribute quite a lot to the mitigation on the top of the adaptation to the, like for instance, to protect for the coast, for the erosions and things like this. But the mitigation is at the corner here. Okay, so we started to look at this in West Africa, looking at the countries, you know, about their mission, and more especially looking at how the marine protected area were contributed to the achievement of the what we call the NDCs, the National Determined Contribution of Countries. And we found out that in Mauritania is about 4%. We found out before that it was more 20%, but we changed the figures, so it's about 4%. Guinea-Bissau, you know, you can see that is about 3 times the achievement of the NDCs by 2030. Okay, so it means that just the MPAs in these countries are contributing very, very significantly to the achievement of the whole country regarding their Paris, the Paris objectives, and what they want to do, you know, to mitigate and to reduce the carbon emission and to increase the carbon sequestration. So the MPAs are playing a key role here in West Africa on this. Okay, that's just a word about the fact that the money now goes to climate change and not anymore to biodiversity. So that's something that we need to have in mind. But the good point is that there's a lot of money going to the climate change, and that we can use for improving the biodiversity. Okay, the key issue is about, and we have a large project on NBS at the moment, is about to be very cautious about not using the NBS for the restoration in a way for improving, we can say, the carbon sequestration in some areas, but really to provide a full services in terms of biodiversity. So that's something that we need to have in mind. I think that's the last one. So in a nutshell, so we need to be very, very aware of the importance of ocean and water. Okay, and it's still very low. Okay, the coordination and the planning are the key thing, and it takes a lot of time, especially on coordination, to convince the people to work together. It's very, very challenging. The potential are quite unknown. We are finishing now a work for the World Bank in Jamaica, and it's quite surprising. The potential is very, very unknown. Okay, same in many other countries, but for Jamaica, it's quite surprising. Capacity building is something that's it's important, and especially what is important, I think you have this in UBC, and me, I did my study in Canada as well, in Rimouski and the other parts, and I've been very lucky because I did a master over there in I think it was in marine resource management, something like this, and I've been lucky because I had the opportunity to have lectures in law of the sea, in ports, transportation, in marine resource economics, in biology, ecology, etc., etc. All of things that makes me thinking a bit different, and make me thinking not only for the fishery point of view or the port point of view, but thinking globally. And I think this is very, very important for the education to be able to have many tools, but also to have to be able to look at the maritime sector or the maritime economy from a very broad perspective. And at the end, so we need also to have some accounting mechanisms. So we are developing with Seychelles and also with Jamaica some satellite accounting system. So Blue satellite accounting system is quite challenging. Blue financing, so we are finishing at the moment with UNDP, UNEP, and FAO a large project in the Caribbean with Barbados, Grenada, and St. Vincent, and blue financing. The outcome is a bit weak, we can say, or a bit poor, is that more or less there's not so many new financing tools for the blue economy, and we have to rely to the existing one. Okay, so that's a bit poor in terms of outcome. But I think the thing will come very soon with the we can say with the intervention of the insurance company. And I knew I was talking too much. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, the insurance company and also the banking system into the ecosystem services. Just in 2 minutes, I give you the example of the Bahamas. We started to work with the Bahamas in 2019. In September 2019, the Hurricane Dorian hit the Bahamas, destroyed completely the Great Abaco and the Grand Bahamas in the north of Nassau. And before that, the people were only thinking about developing the big cruise tourisms and the finance. And after that, and thanks to the insurance and AXA, they are really thinking about developing and improving the resilience of the ecosystems. So there's a lot to do, and the insurance company are working on that now. So maritime sovereignty, but that's okay. So in a short while, so we need to be able to implement the blue economy. We definitely need to have some blue governance scheme in place with very strong coordination, planning, and tools to manage this. Thank you very much.
So my question is, how do you, we know that Africa is a hotspot for climate change, and we know that the resources of Africa are going to be highly impacted all on every front, biodiversity, ecosystem, all the ecosystem services. How do you think blue economy in Africa will adapt to those incredible change that will appear in the next decade?
Yeah, I think the key thing is to be able to have a good understanding of how the climate change will affect the fisheries. For instance, I mean, if we just talk about the fisheries, it will affect everything. But and at the moment, it's very weak in terms. I mean that William has done some work on this. Some people have done some work, but the overall is very the knowledge on how the ecosystem will be affected is quite low. Okay, so there's quite a significant work to do in order to provide the evidence about what is coming and what will happen very soon. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is to convince the policymakers, to be a bit more proactive on this. Okay, so rather than just sit and wait, to be really proactive, and this is something that we are trying to do.
Thank you. I think the next question is from Rashid, and then it will be Jessica.
Yeah, so Pierre, thank you very much for the talk, and yeah, you give a much broader view of the blue economy than most people, right? You talk about integrative thinking, interdisciplinary thinking, cross-sectoral. These are all very important. Yeah, so that's good. Now, Lydia, Te, and myself, we published a paper on BC ocean economy recently, and one of the results we got has been in my mind all over. We found that what we did was to split the ocean economy into those dependent on life in the ocean and those that don't depend on life in the ocean, which is a nice way to categorize in order to understand things. And so you're talking about shipping and the ports. I mean, these things can go on, whether there's life in the ocean or not, right? But you need the fish to get the fishery going. You need carbon sequestration, you need life. So when we did that, what shocked me was that the value from the activities that don't depend on life are about 4 times, if you just look at the market value, than the value from those that depend on the ocean. And so I started being very worried about the trade-off that this means. You could see countries trying to convert their blue economy into the dead ocean blue economy, if you like, right? I'm pushing the envelope. So then this market, non-market value, and how it might play in trade-offs. So have you thought about this? How do we deal with that? You know?
Yeah, that's a big issue, man. But this is why, you know, and for instance, here in Madagascar, this is what we put up front, is that the blue economy first is about having the people on board, okay? Yeah. And secondly, about improving the environment, okay? So I think that's the key things. Otherwise, if you go to the market and the market value, I think you will go and you will go just for big infrastructure, you will go for port, you will go for big things, but you will not go for the people and for the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that, yeah.
Thank you.
So the next question is from Jessica. Jessica, if you can.
Here we go. Thank you so much, Pierre, for this great presentation. I am a former IOF, or Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries. I'm going to call myself an alumni of the programs there, and currently working for Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Although I don't work on blue economy, I am part of conversations that include it. And so we have a lot of discussions around the role of the ocean in adapting to, mitigating, and building resilience to climate change. And I had a question regarding one of your slides where you presented data for carbon sequestration or rates in marine protected areas on the west coast of Africa. And I was just curious if perhaps at some point we could get the source for that information. And I asked that because I'm really curious to learn more about values or those. Oh, sorry.
I think I don't know if I lost you or if we lost you. But
we lost you.
If you can just repeat, yes.
At what point did you lose me? Sorry.
At the beginning of the question.
Sorry.
You're working for DFO. After that, just.
Oh no, that's so early.
That's no. I'm just being precautionary here, so we get your point. Okay.
Okay, I'll start my question over and let me know if you lose me again, but I turned off my video to try to improve the connection here. But my question really is if we could get the source for the data. One of your slides presented data on marine protected areas and the rate of sequestration for carbon. And I think it was specific to the west coast of Africa. And I asked this because I really want to learn more about how to derive these values and if those methods could be broadened to the point where we could get, large scale understanding of, an understanding of how much carbon is sequestered in larger areas of the ocean and how this would contribute to perhaps someday contribute to the nationally determined contributions that different countries are putting forward in regards to greenhouse gas emissions and their contributions to the Paris Agreement. So really just the source for that data, and just if you have anything you want to add in terms of like carbon sequestration and perhaps expanding that to broader scales, that'd be interesting too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a big. The question is a bit long, so I will try to make a short answer. So we did quite a lot of studies. So we about the carbon sequestration of many MPAs. Okay. And so in the largest is in the Bandarga in Mauritania. So we did quite a lot of work on this for many years. And for 2 years, we are working on the seagrasses, the mapping of seagrasses and the assessment of the carbon sequestration of the different type of seagrasses in West Africa. So in Cabo Verde, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, I think down to Sierra Leone. So that's another thing. So we are, yes. So that's the main sources of our data. Okay. So it's all the work we are doing. We have been done and doing since I think for 4 years now in West Africa, especially on the carbon sequestration. The other point is that this is the methodology we are using. I think we will release before the end of the year a report on the seagrasses and their capacity. How can I say that? The possibility of the integration of the seagrasses into the NDCs for the West African countries. We will release the report before the end of the year. But thanks to the work we have done, the Cabo Verde is the first country in the world that has integrated seagrasses into its NDCs. So this is something that is duplicable.
Next question is for Colette Vadnitz.
So just Pierre, just on the last point to respond to Jessica's question. So I was just wondering, so is that because my guess was that Jessica, that you were asking whether you could utilize the data. So I just wanted to know, Pierre, if that's something that Jessica could use, like the values.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I had a quick. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to complete that, and we are working. We have a very good. We have a world-leading center in cosmology in Portsmouth, and we are working with them not to look at the stars, but to look at the seagrasses using their big technology. And we have. I think it's very promising about the detection of the seagrasses and the different type of seagrasses using the satellite images. Yeah. So we should be able to do that in many other parts of the world very soon.
So my question for you, Pierre, was, I mean, you've had the fortune of working across many different countries and applying a lot of the work across those different countries. So I was just wondering what sort of model you have for engaging with, whether it's local communities or the local governments. What's your approach and what's the model that you utilize for engaging, with local partners?
Well, there is no model as such. I mean, because it all depends, the country. It's every time is different. But the idea is to work at different levels, so from the policymakers, okay, down to the communities. And for instance, I'm going to West Africa in 2 weeks' time, and it's for the Jeff project, and we will only work. Go and visit and talk to the local communities to see what they're thinking about, the project we want to develop. Okay, so there is no model per se. It's just the approach. You need to go and meet the people. So I think that's these things.
Thank you. Next question is from William Chang.
Thanks very much, Pierre, for the very interesting talk. Questions that is, I think, relate to some of the earlier questions. I think one of the things that I find also challenging in developing a sustainable blue economy is that once the opportunities realized, I think it really there's lots of dependence on whether there are sufficient governance structure and institutions that would ensure that the utilizations and realizations of the benefit from the blue economy can be sustainable and can be equitable. And that often is an underlying kind of challenge in many countries in general. So given your experience, what's kind of the approach when you start engaging with the partners, local partners in exploring these questions, how to build that into the pathway to talk about blue economy development?
That's interesting, because first it takes time. So this is something you need to have in mind. Okay. So and this is why, for instance, I have one student doing a PhD on the transformative change for the implementation of the blue economy. Okay. Because you need to change, I say that you need to change the mind of the way the people are thinking. So that you need to have a regular working session with them, okay? And for instance, here in Madagascar, I'm very pleased, to see how quickly? No, because we started to work here in 2018. Okay, but now the people are really thinking, I mean, at almost all level about doing some multi-sectorial work. So when they are thinking about port development, they are thinking not only for the ports or the infrastructure, but also for the well-being of the people, you know, that are depending on the port. Okay, and that's something that takes time. Okay. So that's the things you need to have regular engagement with the people at different levels. Okay, so there's no magic solution. It's really about engaging with the people at different levels and try to bring the people and to put the people together in order that they develop solutions that are far better than just solution within the fishery, a solution within the port or tourism. Yeah. But it takes time.
I just wanted to know if there's a gender dimension of the project, because when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about blue economy. I find that from research that women, some things are not included. So I want to know from your research, are women also part of this innovation? Are they also part of the research?
Yeah, that's the key point, and this is why I'm pushing so much, you know, about the, like here in Madagascar, but in other places, you know, about the development of the algae aquaculture, because this is done by the women, and has been, I mean, like you go to Tanzania and yeah, to Zanzibar and other places in Asia, that has been the key factor for the empowerment of women and for their we can say their freedom. So. Yeah, no, that's one of the key, and I think the gender was, if you remember, it was one concept, or it was part of the UNECA figure that I was showing. Okay, of course, it's part of this.
Well, I suppose just one final thank you, Pierre, from the whole of the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries at UBC. It was a really fascinating talk. I really enjoyed it, and nice discussion as well afterwards.